select national newspapers.
It carries information about politics, economy, entertainment, sports.
Alright, that is it on a sports update.
Business, industry, trade, and commerce. We carry the news of Nigeria and the world, bringing it right to the comfort of your home.
So many events happened from yesterday within and outside the country. Please stay with us as we take a look at the stories.
Newspaper headlines, a program you cannot afford to miss, showing only on ACNN TV.
A beautiful morning to all our esteemed viewers, and we wish all Christian faithful across the globe a blessed Ash Wednesday. Welcome to today's edition of Newspaper Headlines, where we share with you on the happenings we did in around the world from different national dailies. And in the paper today, ex-head of state asked governors to resolve their differences and take responsibility. These and other matters arising make up headline this morning. And remember, you can join the program through phone call and our social media platforms. On YouTube is youtube.com/ACNN-TV. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/ACNN-TV. On Instagram and Twitter at ACNN-TV. And our website is acnntv.com. I am Rachel Ibunu. We shall begin with the Vanguard newspaper, and I'll take it from the lead story. It's on insecurity. Nigeria heading to point of no return unless, you want to know why? From the ex-head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar. And the kickers says embers of disunity, anarchy, disintegration spreading fast, urges governors to tone down their rhetoric, take full responsibility for managing frustrations within their states. And the last key is service chiefs to deploy all resources needed for victory. See details on page 8. And coming down the lead story, Taraba Revolution series on health, fighting the HIV/AIDS scourge in Taraba. I take the first paragraph. The administration of architect Darius Ishako in Taraba State has deliberately focused on healthy well-being of the people, apart from engaging in measures that would improve primary and secondary health care delivery. Special attention is also being paid on the battle against HIV/AIDS. And we have this picture down of mass testing and advocacy in Taraba State. And beside our story is a picture of Borno Yobe Elders Forum in Aso Rock. Borno State Governor Professor Babagana Umar Zulum left. Mai Mala Buni, Governor of Yobe State, right, and others, when President Muhammadu Buhari received a delegation from Borno and Yobe Elders Forum in the State House, Abuja, yesterday. And beneath the picture, insecurity, prove you don't support criminality. Southwest governors tell federal government. The story can be found on page 10. And on page 6, bandits kill village head, 10 others, kidnap 20 in Niger. We move above the masthead. Affair for Vanguard. Open grazing. Challenges 1. Details on page 23. On page 19, Food inflation rises 20.6% as price increases persist. Headline inflation hits 16.5% in January. That story is on page 19. Clark, other Niger Delta leaders, militants lambast Gumi. The kicker, for saying herdsmen learned kidnapping from militants. See details on page 5. And on page 9, we'll continue to work for Nigeria's unity. This is coming from the President Buhari, and the story is on page 9. And now to the last story on the Vanguard newspaper on page 20. AFCFTA, mapping Nigeria's foray into Africa's single market. See details on page 20. We move to the next paper, which is the Punch newspaper, and I'll take it from the top above the masthead. Experts blame insecurity as inflation hits record 16.47%. Details on page 17. On page 16, marketers raise petrol price to 170 naira. Depots suffer shortage. Marketers raise petrol price to 170 naira. Depots suffer shortage. That is on page 16. And on page 30, Arewa Consultative Forum, Afenifere, others fault Buhari's silence on herders' menace. Nigeria moving towards disintegration, Abdulsalami warns. See details on page 7. Now to the lead story of the Punch newspaper. EFCC defends new chair as graft allegation surfaces. The kickers, shake-up looms in anti-graft commission as Buhari names Bauer new helmsman. White paper to determine suspended chairman Mago's fate, says presidency. See the details on page 2. And we have these pictures of prosecution of 10 offenders before a magistrate court for violating COVID-19 protocols in Oka, Anambra State. Coming down below the picture on page 30. Buhari Security Council modernized, can't stop herdsmen kidnapping. Coming from an ex-governor. Page 9. Alleged 694 billion naira debt. Jumo Ibrahim loses bid to reclaim firms. On page 21, PDP mocks APC as ex-governor Daniel defects to ruling party. PDP mocks APC as ex-governor Daniel defects to ruling party. Now the bottom strip stories. Ogun monarch alleges armed build-up as Makinde, Abiodun hosts northern governors. See details on page 7. And on page 8, men in military uniforms arrested with 234 kg drugs. That is on page 8. And now to the last story of the Punch newspaper on page 4. CJ kicks as brother fingers judge over 3-year detention. That is the last story on the Punch newspaper. We move to Daily Sun newspaper, and I'll take it beside the masthead. Buhari's nominee as EFCC chair. Bauer faces Senate screening today. Details on page 8. The lead story, State of the Nation. Abdulsalami Abubakar gives damning verdict on Nigeria. The kickers, says anarchy, Disintegration loom as country moves to point of no return. UK expresses concern over intercommunal violence. Act fast over rising tension, Northern Forum tells Buhari. See details on page 6. And beside this picture is on insecurity. Senate proposes stiffer penalties for illegal gun owners. Laments limited power to take certain decisions. See the details on page 26. And on page 2, Ehingbeti, Okonjo-Iweala, additional others harp on youth involvement in technology, economic development. Details on page 2. And on page 5, Presidency hails conviction of 5 ex-SARS operatives. And 2023, millions of Nigerians may be disenfranchised. If you want to know why, get the Daily Sun newspaper. And the kicker says, get 9,777 requests for additional polling units. See details on page 27. And we have this picture on Daily Sun newspaper. Is that of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State with his deputy Obafemi Hamzat, third left, the Deputy High Commissioner, British Deputy High Commissioner, Lagos, Ben Jones, the State Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget, Sam Ogilby, President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Toki Magugunje, and the founder, Civil Bed Group, Ben Bruce, at Ehingbeti 2021 in Lagos. This happened yesterday. And below the picture, electricity. Federal government spends 50 billion naira monthly on subsidy. See details on page 25. And now to the last story on the Daily Sun newspaper on page 8. NGF pays fact-finding visit to Shasha, promises to rebuild market. Backs Makinde, dismisses tribal conflict insinuation. Details on page 8. We move to the Nigerian Pilot newspaper. I'll take it below the masthead, and is on insecurity. Buhari fingers people with resources and influence. Buhari fingers people with resources and influence. That is on page 8. On page 13, again, bandits kill traditional ruler, 10 others, kidnapped 24 in Niger State. Oh. Now to the lead story. Governors culpable. The kickers, reps say inflationary. Divisive comments come from state governors. Resolve to caution governors, others against making divisive comments. Warn that such comments could provoke aggressive reactions from public. And the last kicker says, want IGP to fish out perpetrators of Ibadan mayhem for immediate prosecution. The story is on page 8. And now to the picture from left to right is that of the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, and the DG DSS, Magaji Bichi, during an audience with the delegation of elders of Borno and Yobe State at the Presidential Villa. This happened yesterday. And now below the picture, Malami canvasses creation of Herdsmen's Commission. Malami canvasses creation of Herdsmen's Commission. See details on page 7. The bottom strip stories on page 6. NNPC rules out plans to hike fuel price this February. Bitcoin rises above $50,000 in a historic first-time performance. See details on page 8. On page 13, angry Mina residents demolish deputy governor's house. Our story is on page 13. Page 32, Nigerians bank lose 3.5 billion naira to cyber fraud. And on page 10 is on graft war. Buhari appoints Bawa EFCC chair. Now to the last story on Nigerian Pilot newspaper. Inflation rises above 16.47% as food prices hit 20.56%, coming from NBS, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, and details can be found on page 32. All right, we pause here to observe a short break. When we return, newspaper headline continues with more. Please stay tuned.
Why do we collect the St. Matthias funds every year? Because there are dioceses in the front line contending for the faith. Others are facing persecution from Boko Haram and Fulani cattle herdsmen attacks. We collect the St. Matthias Fund because there are mission fields. Our people faithfully worshipping God in open fields, dilapidated buildings, and need our help. We collect the St. Matthias funds because there are evangelists and pastors in dioceses opening new mission frontiers, establishing fellowships that need our help. We are Christians. We are Anglicans. We do help our brothers in need. That is why we need you to give generously to help our dioceses and brothers and sisters. Please do give generously to the St. Matthias Fund on Sunday, 21st February 2021. May the Lord bless you as we give to support one another in God's ministry. Venerable Dr. Paul Daju, General Secretary, Announcer.
Thank you for staying tuned. Our phone lines are still open for your contributions regarding the major stories. We now continue with the New Telegraph newspaper. I'll take it from the lead story. Buhari reads riot acts. I'll deal with troublemakers, coming from Buhari. The kickers. Abubakar warns of Nigeria's imminent disintegration. Gunmen kill district head, 9 others. Abduct 24 in Niger State. Senate to impose penalties on illegal firearms bearers. See the details on page 3. And below the picture, Ehingbeti, Lagos key to Nigeria's economic fortunes, coming from the federal government. And the kickers, Okonjo-Iweala, additional sick infrastructure, youth development. Sanwo-Olu harps on smart city projects, unveils plans. Details on page 4. And on page 26, asthma inhaler can reduce COVID-19 by 90%. That is another discovery. Asthma inhaler can reduce COVID-19 by 90%. See details on page 26. We move above the lead story. President sidelines police, opts for Bawa as EFCC chair. Details on page 5. And on page 4, 2023, Saraki, PDP leaders Pali Jonathan. As manned aircraft overshoots Lagos Airport runway, facility closed. Details on page 3. And on that same page, ex-SARS operatives backs death sentence for murder. Now above the masthead, Federal government spends 50 billion naira monthly to subsidize electricity. The kicker, Minister, discos must replace faulty transformers. Orders. The story starts from the front page and continues on page 5. And now to the last story on New Telegraph newspaper. NBS. Food items, essential services prices push inflation to 16.47%. That is on page 5. That ends it with the New Telegraph newspaper. Now is Nigerian Tribune newspaper will start above the masthead at 16.47%. Nigeria's inflation hit 33 months high. See details on page 6. And on page 26, Bawa, operative with investigated Dezani to replace Magu as EFCC boss. Bawa, operative with investigative Dezani to replace Magu as EFCC boss. The kicker, confusion over his suitability as level 13 officer. That is on page 26. Now beside the picture, Sanwo-Olu unveils 10-year infrastructure plan for Lagos. The kicker, at Ehigbeti Summit, Buhari, Okonjo-Iweala, additional harp on economic, infrastructure, youth development. Details on page 28. And now the lead story. Herders-farmers conflict. It is time for pastoralism. Commission. AGF suggests. I take that story again. Herders-farmers conflict. It is time for pastoralism commission. AGF suggests. The kickers, Kano, Zamfara, Kebbi, Niger, under governors in Ogun, insist on ban on open grazing. Say Shasha mayhem, not tribal conflict. Perpetrators of Ibadan violence must be fished out, reps tell IGP. Recent ethnic attacks unfortunate, adding to existing problems, coming from Abdusalami. The story can be found on pages 5, 25 and 26. Beside this picture on page 22, Battle for 2023. Saraki, Anyim, others meet Jonathan. On that same page, 22, INEC receives 9,777 requests for additional polling units. On page 7, federal government suspends over 50 billion naira on electricity subsidy monthly. And now to the last story on Nigerian Tribune on page 22. Southwest PDP crisis. Ladoja to wade into Makinde, Fayose rift. See details on page 22. We move to Blueprint newspaper. I'll take it beside the masthead. With Okonjo-Iweala as WTO boss, world may hit trade reset button. World may hit trade reset button. See details on page 24. On page 22, increase in food, transport prices stock inflation at 16.47%. We come down the bottom, we come down the masthead stories. 40-year-old Bauer set to make history as EFCC chair. Faces screening at Senate's plenary. Group urges prompt confirmation. Justice not served in Magu's case, coming from the council. And the story starts from the front page, it continues on page 6. On page 5, 2023. I never said APC must zone slot to south. I never said APC must zone slot to south. Coming from Gire. The story is on page 5. And now to the lead story. Nigeria in a state of fear. This is coming from Abdusalami. The kickers want governors to take responsibility and stop blame game. Urges service chiefs to draw coordinated program. NGF louts Makinde pledges support for Shasha victims. People with resources, influence behind violence, coming from Buhari, and the story is on page 6. We move to the picture on Blueprint newspaper. From left is that of President Muhammadu Buhari, the Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum, and Yobe State Governor Maimala Buni during President Buhari's meeting with members of the delegation from Borno and Yobe Elders Forum at the State House, Abuja. This happened on Tuesday. And below the picture, bandits kill Niger monarch, 9 others abduct 25. The kickers, 2 slain in Kaduna. Explosion injures 7 children. National Assembly moves to impose stiffer penalties on firearms bearers. See details on page 5. And now to the bottom strip stories. We've received 9,777 requests for more polling units. This is coming from the INEC boss, and the story is on page 7. On page 20, Daniel, Atiku's campaign DG, dumps PDP for APC. On that same page 20, Project Nigeria's image. Project Nigeria's image, Buhari tells ambassadors designate. And now to the last story on Blueprint newspaper on page 8. Final year Jigawa Varsity student commits suicide over cheating girlfriend. Wow. All right, that is it on the headline this morning. We move to sport on Vanguard newspaper. I'll take that off page 31. It's on Champions League. Ronaldo targets victory against Porto. Arsenal investigates Aubameyang over COVID-19 rules breach. And coming down, Alaba confirms exit from Bayern this summer. Djokovic smashes his racket at Australian Open. And on Australian Open, Serena Shink Halep's hope battles Osaka in semi-finals. Serena sinks Halep's hopes, battles Osaka in semi-finals. Djokovic also qualifies. And beside that story, Madonna left £5 million for his children, as £75 million of his money is missing. Wow. Mane, Rogers hailed Ndidi as Leicester's backbone. And coming down, Southeast Sports Foundation drags top athletes to Enugu. Last story on page 31. Zidane faces injury crisis ahead at Atlanta tie. Zidane faces injury crisis ahead Atlanta tie. That is it on page 31. Now to the back page of Vanguard Sports. AFCON qualifiers. Eagles prefer Uyo to Lagos, says Roa. And Neymar begs Mercy to join PSG. That is it on the sports this morning. We give you today's fixtures On Champions League, FC Porto versus Juventus, 9 p.m. Sevilla versus Dortmund, 9 p.m. On EPL, Burnley versus Fulham, 7 p.m. Everton versus Man City, 9:15 p.m. And EFL Cup, Sunderland versus Lincoln City at 7 p.m. La Liga, Levante versus Atletico Madrid, 7 p.m. And finally, League One, Marseille versus Nice, coming up by 9 p.m. today. All right, and that is the much we can bring to you on the midweek edition of Newspaper Headlines. We thank you for joining us. Remember, Ash Wednesday is a time to sit back, reflect, and share our thanks to our Creator, a season of prayer and fasting, and also to spend more time with Jesus. Have a blessed day, and bye for now.